Hello there and good morning, everybody. I hope you're all doing well today. Welcome to our second live stream Sunday service. This time we have something a little bit special in store for you today. This is the anniversary service for Rennyo Shonin, the 8th abbot of the Honganji Temple. If you will, please join me for 1 minute of silent meditation. Namu Amida Butsu, Namu Amida Butsu, Namu Amida Butsu. We will now have Sutra Chanting-Shoshinge on page 20 in your red service books. And if everyone watching there in TV land will please gasho before we begin.
Vandana
Well, I was going to say, will everyone please rise for Gatha-Namu Amida Butsu on page 121. If you're at home, you can stand up and hopefully you have your service books. So, page 121. When life is kind and sunlight gilds the day, when fortune smiles and flowers adorn our way, oft let us pause, with grateful hearts we say, Namu Amida Butsu. When comes ignorance to us and our kin, when doubts and fears assail us from within, this be our thought, that we recite again. Namu Amida Butsu. E'en though our way leads 'neath a darkened sky, and to our loved ones pain and death draw nigh, our tears may flow, yet trustingly we cry, Namu Amida Butsu. Please remain standing for the three treasures on page 17. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham saranam gacchami, Dhammam saranam gacchami, Sangham saranam gacchami. Difficult is it to receive life in human form, now we are living it. Difficult is it to hear the Buddha Dharma, now we hear it. If we do not receive awakening in the present life, then in what life can we hope to receive it? Let us reverently take refuge in the three treasures of the truth. I take refuge in the Buddha. May we, together as one, begin on the great path of enlightenment, holding in our hearts the supreme aspiration. I take refuge in the Dharma. May we, together as one, enter the storehouse of the Dharma and attain true wisdom as deep as the ocean. I take refuge in the Sangha. May we, together as one, uniting in harmony, strive to live for the enlightenment of all beings. The incomparable, deep, and profound Dharma is difficult to encounter even through countless ages of kalpas. Now we are privileged to hear and receive it. Let us endeavor to thoroughly understand the true meaning of the Buddha Dharma. Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu, Namo Amida Butsu. Okay, we will now have a Dharma talk by me. Namadavits, Namadavits, Namadavits. Hello there. So as I mentioned at the top, this is our Rennyo Shonin Memorial Service. He passed away on March 25th in 1499. And if you're wondering who Rennyo Shonin is, he is the 8th abbot of the Honganji, and his scroll can be found on the left-hand side in our temple altar. He's a very important person in the history of the Honganji, and I'm going to be happy to talk about him today. Now, who is Rennyo, and how did the 8th abbot end up being important enough to warrant his own scroll in the Honganji, in every Honganji temple? The answer to this can be found by traveling back over 500 years to the Muromachi era. The Honganji, the temple of the innermost aspiration or the primal vow, was a very different temple when Rennyo was born. Unlike Shinran Shonin, he was born and raised in the temple. In the time since Shinran had married and had children, Buddhist clergy in Jodo Shinshu were able to get married, leading to family-run temples. Though the Honganji had grown out of the small mausoleum built for Shinran in the hills of Kyoto, by Rennyo's time, it was a temple with very few members and had become a branch temple for the Tendai school. He grew up immersed in the Shin Buddhist teachings, reading Shinran's many written works, and traveled with his father in spreading the teachings in what is now Shiga Prefecture, not far from Kyoto. When he became the abbot, he had inherited a temple in distress. Many of the stories about Rennyo describe him having to do things like washing his own children's diapers and wearing clothes because he couldn't afford to buy new ones. Like Shinran Shonin, Rennyo was living during a time when Japan's entire society was being turned upside down. For Shinran, it was a time when the samurai were coming to power and the great temples of the time had forgotten about the suffering of everyday people. For Rennyo, it would be the collapse of the military government and the beginning of the Sengoku Jidai, the Warring States period. Although the previous abbots, the other descendants of Shinran, had been instrumental in keeping Shinran's teachings alive, Rennyo went much further in growing the temple's influence and making the temple truly independent. He removed the non-Jodo Shinshu influences from the altar spaces and, crucially, changed the chanting to be the reciting of Shinran's Shoshinge and Wasan poems that we just chanted right now. Unlike the sutras traditionally chanted at the temples of the time, Shinran's poems, his hymns, were like songs that ministers and members could sing together. He traveled around Japan, going door to door in some cases, and established groups of Shin Buddhists, small groups where people could gather and listen to the teachings together. He sent copies of Shoshinge and handmade scrolls with Amida's name to far-flung groups. One of the most famous things that he sent were the ofumi, letters that were written in easy-to-understand Japanese. These were designed to be read out loud in local gatherings. In an era where many ordinary villagers were not able to read at all, these were crucial in bringing Shinran's thought to the masses. In these letters, he transmitted Shinran's teachings in a way that anyone could understand. He corrected misunderstandings, commented on how to entrust in the Buddhist teachings more deeply, and gave directions for the conduct of Shinshu friends and fellow travelers. Hundreds of years before the invention of radio, television, Facebook, Rennyo had become an expert in communication with remote groups because he had to. Angered over Honganji's newfound independence and increasing numbers of people converting, the monks of Mount Hiei destroyed Otani Honganji, the original Honganji, and Rennyo was forced to flee, eventually setting up a temple far away from Kyoto. From the temple in Yoshizaki, located in what is now Fukui Prefecture, he would be in contact with groups around the country. One interesting that I learned is that the first recorded instance of the name Osaka for that famous town in Japan was from Rennyo's writing. Later in life, he had established a temple where Osaka Castle now stands. The community that gathered there would eventually become the temple and fortress town known as Ishiyama Honganji. It's a fascinating story for another time. Living in the Kansai region, there were reminders of Rennyo's influence everywhere I went. The seminary I studied at was Yamashina Higashi Honganji, another town where he had established a headquarters temple. Every day we would pass by a well that Rennyo had used and walked by Rennyo's stern but supportive statue outside of the Yamashina Betsuin. We visited the local temple where he had died and visited the grave that was maintained by both Nishi and Higashi Honganji. As a minister, it is tremendously inspiring to see how Rennyo was able to uniquely adapt the Buddhist teachings to his time and place. He set in place a structure that would carry Jodo Shinshu through hundreds of difficult years and was able to build it into the largest denomination in Japan. He's an example we can look to in how to live, how to find understanding of our world, and share the Dharma, even with people who are very far away. Unlike Shinran, Rennyo did not have the exact same kind of spiritual journey Shinran had, since he had been immersed in the temple since he was born. He was living in an era and circumstance far removed from the one Shinran had lived in, and his challenge was to find a way to translate the essence of Shinran's teachings and to share it with everyone. My favorite story about Rennyo illustrates his approach to Buddhism. A man had told him, "My mind is like pouring water into a basket. When I listen to the Buddha Dharma in the hall, I'm filled with grateful and reverential feeling. But when I leave there, however, I revert to my old mind." Rennyo's response was, "Put your basket into the water. Keep your body soaked in the water of Dharma." His writings in the Ofumi letters emphasize that our lives are like an illusion from beginning to end. The people who we leave behind and the people who go before us are more numerous than dewdrops that rest briefly on leaves and branches. We cannot control many of the circumstances in our lives, and our inability to accept things changing leads to our suffering. The reality is that we are living in an impermanent world, so we must do everything we can to live our lives to the fullest and make the most out of the time that we have. If we can bow our heads to this truth and live in the spirit of Shinran and Rennyo, we can truly walk in their footsteps and remember them on days like today. I want to close with it was from a congratulatory address from Archbishop Tatsuru Kigoshi, written in 2001 it was a little bit after the 500th memorial service held in 1998. For me, learning about Rennyo was something that I really wanted to do, especially because the time that I had joined Higashi Honganji in Los Angeles, we were getting ready for the 750th anniversary of Shinran's passing. So, we're focused on learning about Shinran. So I had been wondering, who was this person that we had on the left side of our altar? Someone who had lived through such interesting times. But Reverend Kigoshi, Archbishop Kigoshi says, advancements, especially in computer technology, have created a global society in which every sort of information can be received at a moment's notice. For those who have no religious foundation, that abundance of information serves only to confuse and make them unable to determine between true and virtual reality. We can only help but think that people are becoming more and more isolated, plunging deeper into doubt and anxiety. Over 500 years ago, to the people living in the midst of war and poverty, unable to find any meaning nor happiness in life, with no possibility for escape, Rennyo Shonin encouraged them to abandon sundry practices, entrust themselves to Amida Buddha, to receive awakening of the afterlife. He devoted his entire life towards giving hope to the people who had no hope, bringing about an awakening to the preciousness of life, and bringing them together in the spirit of fellow travelers, fellow followers on the path of the Nembutsu. Even though many years have passed since 1998, have passed since the anniversary for Rennyo, this is similar situations we're living in now, where we have to communicate with people who are very far away, who may not be able to come to the temple during emergencies like this. We can look to how Shinran and Rennyo approached these crises, how they kept their communities together, and how they supported one another. And so hopefully that's what we can do here. So I'd like to thank you very much for listening, and please join us very soon. Namu Amida Butsu, Namu Amida Butsu, Namu Amida Butsu. Well, so we have some announcements for everybody. Next week, we're going to have our Sunday service live stream. You'll be able to watch that on our Facebook page. And in April, on April 5th, Sunday, we're going to have our Sunday service live stream. And so on the 12th, we're going to have our Hanamatsuri. On the 19th, we're having our Shotsuki live stream, so you can tune in to that. And on the 26th, we'll have our final Sunday service live stream of the month. If you will all please rise for the Gatha-Ondokusan on page 112. Namanabus, Namanabus, Namanabus. Yorai dai no ondoku wa miyoko ni shite mo ozu beshi Well, that will conclude our Rennyo Shonin Memorial Service Sunday live stream for today. I hope that you are all safe and well, and I hope to hear from you soon. We're available by phone and by email, so please keep in touch. Right now, we're in a situation where people are going to be feeling more isolated than ever. And so please make sure to keep in touch with your friends and family. I'm sure a lot of people would appreciate a phone call or a kind email. Thank you very much, and have a very nice day.